All right, so I guess without any further ado, we will go ahead and dive into customizing email in HelpSpot. So the first thing I wanted to cover here today is just to talk about setting up email mailboxes in general. So HelpSpot is designed to connect to either IMAP or POP3 mailboxes, and that connection is a one-to-one relationship. So inside of the admin area here, we have the email mailboxes settings area. And here we set up one new mailbox for every IMAP or POP3 mailbox that we want to connect to. And you can connect to as many mailboxes as you want to. So if you have more than one email address that you're wanting to use inside of HelpSpot, you're going to set up a mailbox for each of those email addresses that you're going to want to connect to. So I have just a example mailbox here that we will look at and kind of walk through some of the common settings and some things we can customize here. Now, I'm really going to be focusing in on the parts that we can customize. A number of these settings that we're going to see here, things like the host name, the username, stuff like that, that's really determined by your email provider. So whoever is running your email server is going to have that information for how you need to connect HelpSpot to your email mailbox. But we'll walk through the things that we can customize inside of HelpSpot in order to control how emails are displayed and handled. So the first thing that we can customize actually is this top setting here. And whenever an email is sent out, it's going to have a email address that the email tells the recipient that it's coming from, and then also a name that it tells the recipient that it's coming from. And we can customize that name here in this account name field. So you can see right now I have customer support filled into here. But you might want this to be a bit more personalized. So some organizations choose to have this name be the actual name of the agent who is interacting with the customer. So I can go ahead and take out this account name, and I actually have a placeholder insertion tool here that I can choose to add a placeholder for. So for instance, I can have it fill in the full name of the logged in staff member who is sending the email. And then I can also mix this in with predefined text as well. So maybe I want to show that first and last name first, and then maybe add in my, company one support. So this is a great way also that you can customize not only just adding in some personalization, but if you have multiple brands that you're supporting inside of HelpSpot, you can set up a mailbox for each brand and have that account name be customized for each brand. So that's the first thing that we can customize inside of the email mailboxes. The next field down is the reply to email address, and this is one that you usually aren't going to want to customize. You're going to want this reply to email address to go back into the same mailbox that the email is being sent from. That way the email can make a full loop and your conversations get threaded properly. Now, one setting that you may want to customize at times is the mailbox that the email is retrieved from. And this is kind of an advanced setting, but I'll take the time to describe it because it's something that sometimes an organization needs to do. So by default, when you are working with a IMAP mailbox, the folder, the IMAP folder that the email is going to be retrieved from is the inbox folder. And when HelpSpot retrieves that email, it deletes that email out of the inbox folder in order to keep track of what emails it has already retrieved. Now, there are times when you may want to connect to a mailbox, but you may want only some of those emails to make their way into HelpSpot. And so what you can do is you can have HelpSpot actually retrieve emails from a different IMAP folder. So you would usually do this through either a IMAP client like Outlook or Apple Mail, something like that, or through a webmail interface. You could go into there, create a new folder, and then point this setting here in the mailbox settings at that particular folder. then any mail that is moved into that folder will get pulled into HelpSpot. So this can be helpful if you're kind of running a hybrid setup where maybe you have a mail rule that is finding mail from particular recipients, moving it into that IMAP folder, and then you have HelpSpot retrieve that email. So most of the time, this isn't the ideal way of setting up HelpSpot. You usually want to have a dedicated mailbox that HelpSpot's going to retrieve all the email from. But there are cases where setting up something like this can be helpful. All right, now we have all these account-specific settings. I'm not really going to go through because those are really just going to be determined by your email server that you're connecting to. But as we scroll down here, we do have some more options that we can customize. So the next option that we can customize is the default category. Now, the default category is going to allow us to automatically set a category for any email that we receive into this mailbox. So oftentimes you might have departmental email addresses, for instance. So you might have, HR@company.com, and then IT@company.com, and then maybe maintenance@company.com. So instead of having those all just flow in without a category being assigned to them, you can set up each mailbox to have its appropriate category already assigned. So let's say maybe this is the customer service mailbox. I think that's what this one is. Okay, yep. We can have it assigned to general support here automatically. So this can be helpful with getting requests to the right pool of staff more quickly. Second thing that we can enable here is an auto reply. So this is disabled by default, but it can be turned on if you want it to be turned on. So what an auto reply is going to do is it's going to send the customer back an email immediately acknowledging that HelpSpot has received the message, and will give them a link to the public portal to allow them to update the request further in that way. So this can be helpful, especially if you sometimes maybe have customers that get anxious about whether emailing the support address has actually done anything or not, and that kind of thing. So you can send out an automatic email right away. Now, the content of that automatic email is going to be contained down in this auto reply template. And we're going to dive in much more depth into templates in just a little bit. But just know for now that when you enable that auto reply, the template for that auto reply is coming from right down here. The next setting down here is the outbound email setting. And again, I'm not going to go into detail on this one because this is going to really be more about how your particular email server is set up. But just know that by default, there are SMTP settings contained over in another settings screen that are the system default SMTP settings. By default, every mailbox is going to use the same SMTP connection to send outgoing mail. So SMTP is the outgoing mail protocol. So any mail heading out of HelpSpot will use that SMTP server. Now, if you need to use different SMTP settings for each mailbox, you can go ahead and do that. This is often the case if you have multiple email domains that you're sending through, or depending on the security requirements of some SMTP connections, you're going to need to set up one for each mailbox that you have. So you can go ahead and select custom settings and then fill in the needed settings here again. And again, this is just the host name, the ports, and the usernames and passwords that will allow you to connect. All right. And then finally, we have all of these email templates. Again, as I mentioned, we'll come back to this in just a second. All right, so I mentioned that there's another settings area where we're pulling default SMTP settings from. And this area has a number of other email settings that aren't mailbox specific. So this settings area is found over in settings and then email integration. And you can see here at the top, we have that SMTP configuration where we can set up how emails are going to be sent out of HelpSpot. by default. But then we have a number of other settings down here that are going to control some things about how emails work. Now, inside of HelpSpot, every request receives a request ID, and that request ID is attached to every email that HelpSpot sends out. And this is what allows HelpSpot to thread emails together. What can happen in some organizations is you might have more than one HelpSpot install in an organization, or you might have another organization that's using HelpSpot and you want to be able to email back and forth with that HelpSpot installation. So in that case, the request IDs won't match up. And what you can have is request IDs getting threaded between those two HelpSpot installations, getting mixed up. To counteract that problem, what we can do is we can specify a request ID prefix. So what a request ID prefix is going to do is it's going to add on a set of letters onto the front of that request ID number that will uniquely identify this HelpSpot installation from any other ones. So maybe you have two HelpSpot installations, one for your IT department and one for your HR department, and you want to be able to send emails back and forth between those two HelpSpot installs. In that case, we could add in a IT prefix for the IT department HelpSpot installation, and then maybe an HR prefix for the HR department. In this way, each request ID is going to be completely unique that are generated in those two systems. And if we forward an email from one system to the other system, it won't cause any conflicts at all. So again, this is a really specific setting for a specific use case, but it's good to know that it's there. So if you are one of the customers that's running into this kind of a issue, you can solve that problem in this way. The next option down here that we have is global BCC. And again, this is an option that only some customers need, but if you have compliance requirements that require you to have a archive of all emails sent out of HelpSpot, you can do that through a global BCC. So what global BCC does is it sends a email to a address as a BCC, so the customer never sees that it's sent to this address, but then that mailbox that is receiving those emails can serve as an archive of everything that got sent out of HelpSpot. In this case, we can also choose whether we want to have only the public notes to customers, if that's your requirement, or all outbound emails. So that's going to include staff notifications, anything like that as well. The next option that we have down here is the reply above text. And this is something that people ask quite often about. If you notice when HelpSpot sends out emails, it's going to always have this text that says reply above this line to add a note to this request. The reason that HelpSpot has that is that it needs to know where to cut off the email so that you don't get the full long history of the email chain every time the request is updated. Otherwise, you end up getting repeated content in the request history. So this line, anything above that line is going to get included in the new request history. Anything below that line is going to get cut off. Now, you do need this line to be there in order for HelpSpot to function properly, but you can change what the text says and what it looks like. So if you want to go ahead and customize this, if you don't like this reply above this line to add note to this request, if you have something else you'd like it to say, you can go ahead and fill that in here, and then that will be used in all of the email templates. All right, we have a number of other settings here. I'm not going to walk through every one, but I do want to just hit on a couple others that can just allow us to control some different things with email in general here. So one thing I just want to note is the spam whitelist and blacklist. And what the whitelist and blacklists allow us to do are to automatically filter out or automatically accept certain messages that come into HelpSpot. So in a whitelist, you might add in your own company's domain, perhaps, so that any email addresses that are coming from that domain are automatically going to be accepted. Or you might blacklist a known spam sender's domain, something like that. You can also get more advanced with this because this whitelist and blacklists are going to be looking at the full email headers. And if you've never looked at email headers before, if you're in something like Gmail, you can click on View Original Message inside of there, and you'll be able to see the full headers that get sent with a email, and it has a lot of information about the email being sent. And so what you can do is you can find some things like perhaps you wanting to filter out all auto replies. So whenever someone has an out of office message, you want to just filter those out automatically. You can add something like looking for X auto reply, which is a header inside of an email that is an auto reply, and you can blacklist those emails out. Now, you do want to be careful with this because blacklists are permanent. HelpSpot's just going to drop that email and it won't be recorded anywhere. So you want to be sure that your rules are good and that you're not going to lose the emails that you really want to have. But this can be a great tool for filtering out unneeded messages. And then we have a bunch of other spam and loop protection settings here. Like I said, we aren't going to cover all of those today. If you have any questions about these specific settings, feel free to let me know in the questions area, and I can go ahead and answer those. So we're going to go ahead now and move on from these email integration settings, and we'll start looking at email templates now. So email templates are what control the look and formatting of every email that's sent out of HelpSpot. And we have a number of different email templates, and each template has a specific use inside of HelpSpot. So to get to those templates, I'm in the admin area and I'm going to customize and then email templates right here. And so what I have here is I have the default template for each type of email that HelpSpot's going to send out. And these templates are going to allow us to do a lot of customization work, branding work, that kind of thing. So let's start with probably the most common one that you might want to edit, and that's the public notes to customers. So this is the template that's going to be used whenever a public note is sent out to a customer. So for most of your customer interactions, this is going to be the template that is going to be used. So we have a couple different buttons here. One allows us to edit that template, and the other one just allows us to view what that template looks like. So if we click on view here, we can see what that looks like. And then if we click on edit, we're able to see the actual HTML that makes up this template. So looking at this template here, you can see we have 3 tabs across the top. And let me walk through what each of these tabs is doing. So the HTML version, email is really HTML behind the scenes most of the time. And so this HTML version is going to be the version that most of your customers are going to see. So this has standard HTML formatting in it, and we can add in other HTML formatting, and we'll walk through that in just a moment. The next tab that we have is a text-only version. Now, some email clients are going to only show text. And so if your customer is one of those customers that's using a text-only email client, this is the version of the template that they'll see. So you'll see that we don't have any HTML formatting tags in here. We just have the plain text. So we send both versions, the HTML version and the text version, all contained within one email file to the customer, and then the customer's email client chooses which of those to view. But this is important to know because when you're making changes to the HTML version, you want to make sure that you're making equivalent changes to the text version as well, because some customers are going to be seeing that text version. Then finally, we have the subject line. And so this is not controlling the body of the email, but instead the subject line that gets sent out when we send an email to a customer. So you can see here, we can make some customizations to that as well if you want to have something different in the subject line than the standard default. So let's start by customizing the HTML here a bit. So I'll just walk through what we have right now, and then we'll make some changes. So right now we have our standard HTML opening, a body tag, and then this first template tag. And so this is whenever you see a pound pound and then all capital text and then another pound pound, that is a template tag. And HelpSpot is going to replace that with whatever that particular template tag is. In this case, it's the reply above text that we looked at earlier. Then we can see we build out a table, and then we have a link, and we have another template tag down here. That's the request check URL. And so if you've ever seen a HelpSpot customer email, you'll know that we include a link to the portal so that customers can go there and view their full request history. And this is how that link gets built. And so this template tag here gets replaced with that URL. Then we scroll down a bit further, you can see we have the message tag here. And so this is going to be the actual content of the note that we're sending out to the customer. And then we close off our body and HTML tags. Now, one thing you might want to do is maybe you have some particular email legalese that your legal department requires you to have at the bottom of every email that goes out to a customer. And maybe you want this to be a little bit more branded, so you want to throw in the company logo as well. So we can go ahead and do that just by editing this HTML here. So I have already here just a little bit of HTML that I'll just put right in there. And you can see here I'm just adding a line break, and then I have my placeholder for my email legalese, and then my image of my company logo here. So I can go ahead and click on done on this and then go ahead and save it. But I have to remember that I also want to make a similar change over to my text version. So in this case, I'm going to just go to the bottom here, and the logo isn't going to show up because it's not an HTML email, it's only supporting text. So I don't need to worry about that logo part, but I am going to put my email legalese in here as well. While we're here, we can go ahead and edit the subject line as well. So right now we're inserting the email subject and the tracking ID, but let's just see how this template tag inserter works so we can put something else in there. So maybe we want to have the status of this particular request always be in the subject line as well. So we'll put the status in there after the tracking ID. And we can do the same thing of inserting template tags also over here. I'll just mention that. So we can go over here, just put where we want the template tag to appear, and then we can scroll through and choose the particular template tag that we want. All right. So we're going to go ahead and click on done. And then you'll see that it's HelpSpot's indicating that we need to save these changes in order to view it. So you'll want to go ahead and click on Save Templates at the bottom here. And so now we can go ahead and click on View. And we can see that now my template's updated with my email legalese always being included, and then my logo is here as well. And then my text version has my changes, and my subject line has that new template tag as well. So many of these templates, as you scroll through them, are going to be quite self-explanatory about when they're going to be used. Things like reset portal password, well, that email is used whenever you reset your portal password. Couple that sometimes trip people up are the difference between a staff notification and notifying staff on a request. So a staff notification is that's the template that's going to be used whenever a automatic system notification is sent out. So if you're the assigned staff member and HelpSpot's just automatically notifying you about an update to a request, that's the template that is going to be used. The notify a staff on a request, that's going to be used whenever a staff member is manually notified by another staff member. So if the staff member, selects to notify another staff member about a particular request update, that's the template that's going to be used. So it's going to include that message and everything. So we have a separate template for that. So Let's go ahead and look at the staff notifications template, because this is one where you often will find that you might want to include some of those template tags that we were looking at before. So for instance, let's just look at the information that is provided here, and then we can see some ways that we can perhaps improve things. So when we're sending out a staff notification right now, we have that reply above, and then we have the label of the message, and then the request check URL. So that's just going to be the URL back to the admin area for that particular request. The message, whatever the notification message is, and then the request details. And so the request details is going to contain a number of pieces of information about the request to help the staff member know what request this notification is regarding. So it'll include things like the customer name, I believe their customer ID, the request ID, things like that. But you might have some other information that you're recording in HelpSpot that you want your staff to be able to see on these notifications. For instance, maybe you have a custom field that you want to have always included. Well, we can go ahead and include a custom field inside of this staff notification email. So if I go ahead and look at my all my options for my template tags here, I'll be able to find, let's see, where is it? Okay, so maybe I want to always include my due date custom field. So I have a date field that I have that indicates the due date on any request. And that's something I want to send to my staff whenever I'm notifying them. So I'm going to choose to include that. And as you can see here, that tag is just the custom, and then 2 is the ID of that particular custom field. And so now that will be included whenever I send out a staff notification. So you can really use these templates to provide more information to your staff and fill in, some custom information that you're recording in HelpSpot into the emails that you send out also. You can do the same thing with customer emails too, if that's something that you want to have included. And again, here we would want to remember to go over to the text version as well and include the same thing here. All right, so now we're going to move back to mailboxes for a second because I want to touch on mailbox specific templates. So these default templates that we're looking at right now are the ones that are going to be used if you don't make any other changes. So we can go ahead and edit this public notes to customers template, and that's going to be used for every public note coming out of HelpSpot, unless we go back into the email mailboxes area and start to customize these templates. So you can see here I have a couple of email mailboxes set up inside of my HelpSpot installation here. And maybe that logo that I included is really only appropriate for this customer support email address. This brand B email address, I don't really want that logo to be there. So I can go ahead and edit this mailbox. And I can scroll down to the bottom here and I can set up specific email templates that are only used when this mailbox is in use. So I could go ahead in and edit my public notes to customers. And we can see that the template here is blank by default. So if the template's blank, it's going to use those default templates that we set up just before. But maybe I want to customize this. So I'm going to populate this HTML version with the default text. And you can see that my default text now includes this logo. So I can go ahead and say, well, in this particular email mailbox, I don't want that logo to appear. So I'm going to go ahead and just eliminate that. And we can see our text is here. We can keep our email legalese in there. And then maybe we don't want the status to be shown in the subject line on this particular brand's mailbox either. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that. Then we can go ahead and click on Done and then save our edits. And so now whenever we're emailing from that brand B mailbox, that custom template is going to be used. So it really allows you to make each mailbox kind of its own custom experience for your customers. There are a few other templates also in here that we can edit. So we can edit the auto reply, which is what I mentioned before. So we can set up, turn auto reply on for this mailbox. And then we can have a specific custom auto reply message that gets sent out for this mailbox. And then we also have custom templates for external notes. And then finally, we have custom templates for the portal form for the mailbox that this portal is attached, or for the portal that this mailbox is attached to. So that's another thing to be aware of with email mailboxes is if you are setting up secondary portals, and this is kind of getting very specific, but if you're setting up secondary portals for each of your brands, so maybe you have, brand B at company or .company.com is your secondary portal that you have set up with specific branding for brand B, then you can also have a portal auto reply email, because that's a separate template from the email auto reply. You can have that portal auto reply email be sent out with its own branding and that kind of thing as well. All right, so I have two final areas that I want to talk about, and then we will bring things around for any questions that you may have here that what I've presented has brought up. So the next area that we're going to look at are mail rules. Mail rules allow us to perform more advanced actions than just auto-replying based on a new request email that comes in. So the first thing to understand about a mail rule is it's only going to run when an email is coming in that's creating a new request. And you can see it's noted right here. Any follow-ups to existing requests, so when a customer emails back in again on the same request, those aren't going to be impacted by mail rules. But what mail rules allow us to do is to do some more advanced things than just sending out that auto reply. So for example, maybe we want to turn off that automatic auto reply, and we just want to send a auto response from a mailbox if the email is not from a particular domain. So maybe we have our internal staff, if they email in something, we don't want to send an auto reply to them. It's just if someone external to the company sends in an email. So what we can do is create a customized auto replier. So I'm just going to call this mail rule customized auto reply. And now we can go ahead and start to set up our rules for when this mail rule is going to fire. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say if the email from line does not contain, and then I'm going to say at company.com. So I don't want anything from company.com. If their email address contains that, I don't want to send them my auto reply. So if it doesn't contain that, then let's go ahead and send an auto reply. And you can see we have a number of different actions here that we can perform. In this case, what I want to do is do an instant reply. But you can see we can do other things, like we can set categories and staff assignments. We can do reporting tags. We can set custom fields. All of those kinds of things, a lot of the customizable areas of HelpSpot, we can go ahead and set up when a new request comes in based on our mail rules. So in this case, I'm going to do an instant reply. And at this point, I'll just put in whatever I want my auto reply text to be here. And so now my auto reply would be customized to only send out the auto reply when I really want it to be sent out. So I can go ahead and just put in some sample text here. And then we can go ahead and add that rule. And there we go, we're all set to go. The final thing that I wanted to touch on today is the email parser. Now, the email parser allows us to take an email and send in additional information about the request in that email. So When I usually find this most often useful is actually when I'm integrating HelpSpot with a third-party system. You might have a third-party system that's going to send emails into HelpSpot that you want to have create tickets, but maybe you want some extra stuff to be set up right away when that ticket makes its way into HelpSpot. And so what you can do is you can add what look like template tags basically into an email that you're sending into HelpSpot that are going to perform different actions on that request. And we have this all documented out in our HelpSpot docs. I'll bring that up in just a second. But you can see what we can do here is we can do things like we can specify the first and last name of the customer, what the customer's phone number is, what custom fields we want defined. And we can control this all just from an email that we're sending into HelpSpot. So if I go ahead and send out this email at this point, we'll go ahead and let that send. And we should be able to see that email come into our workspace here in just a second. And we'll be able to see that all those fields and have been set up for us automatically just by including that that text at the bottom of the email. So you can use this, as I mentioned, to integrate with any product that you have that's sending email into HelpSpot. You can insert those tags, have that other product, put in the appropriate data that you need, have that data automatically flow into HelpSpot. So while we wait for that email to come in, I'll just bring up the documentation for the email parser. And you'll be able to find that just at support.helpspot.com. And then if we go ahead and look in the API manual, you're able to see that we have a email parser API chapter. And inside of here, we outline examples of inserting all of this types of information through the email parser. All right, let's check and see if our request came in. All right, so here's our new request that came in. We can see right away that our customer name has been assigned as we wanted it to be. And if we go ahead and click in on this request, we can see the customer ID was filled in, the phone number was filled in, the appropriate email address is used, my custom field is filled in, the category is set appropriately, the person who it should be assigned to is set up, and you can see that all of those tags were stripped out of the email history, so it's not muddying up the email history here either. All right, so that's just a little bit about how email parser tags work. So that's really all I had planned for you today as far as customizing email inside of HelpSpot. Kind of walk through email templates, mail rules, a number of particular email settings, and those email commands. So at this point, if you have any questions, just want to open things up for questions now, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. While I'm waiting for any questions to come in, just in case anyone is still typing, I will just mention that for a recording of this webinar, if you're wanting to refer back to it later, where you'll be able to find that is out at helpspot.com. And if you go to support and then video training, and then click on the advanced topics area here, you can see we're putting the archived recordings here down at the bottom. I'll also mention that we have another training session coming up in March, that is regarding status, categories, and custom fields, and various customizations that we can do around those items. So if you're interested in more webinars like this that kind of deep dive into a particular area of HelpSpot, you can go ahead and register for that one out there as well. All right, it looks like we may not have any questions today, so I'd like to thank everyone for attending. Hope you found this session helpful. And if you do think of questions later, feel free to reach out to us in support, and we'll be happy to help you out with any questions you have with using email inside of HelpSpot. Thanks, and have a great day.